Hey there, little family. Welcome in a Little Bit of Life podcast right here with your host, Little. When we speak about female empowerment, there is nothing better than having a veteran, having a female, and having somebody that has done a little bit of both sides. And when I talk about that, it's because of our very special guest today. Her name is Vanessa Munson. She is Miss Washington 2023. But when we always think about beauty pageants and really looking at those women that are representing each state, she's also representing her country in uniform. Vanessa, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to have you on. I was shared a TikTok video that now, congrats, has gone viral, over 4 million views. It was about the infamous Harrison Butker commencement speech, but you took that speech and man, did you just put your feminine spin on it of look at what I've done as a female and now go ahead and judge me now. 4 million views. Did you ever expect that?
No, I remember I saw other people making those videos and, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little upset when I, watched the speech and I was just like, you know what? Let me put my own twist on it. It's been a big year for me and I was like, no, you can do everything. So it's kind of cool to see it blow up that way. I was not expecting that.
That's awesome. We talked about it right in your intro. Not only are you Miss Washington 2023, but you've also served our country. You're in the U.S. Army. Can you talk about how old were you when you enlisted? What made you want to go into the military?
Yeah, well, now I'm a veteran. I actually got out in March. So I did 4.5 years active duty. I was a 42 Alpha Human Resources Specialist. And they say, you join the military to travel the world, but I got stationed in my home state. So I was about 2.5 hours from my hometown. I was with the 508th Military Police Battalion, the prison guards, really. And it was an amazing experience. I enlisted when I was 19, so not directly out of high school. I had to have a couple of ear surgeries, and I actually tried to join the Air Force first, but was disqualified because of my hearing. Army took me in with the waiver, and then, life just kind of went from there.
That's amazing. When we hear, being Miss Washington, so many people judge. And that's why I really wanted to have you on because, we've seen all the movies, Miss Congeniality and everything that kind of altered our viewpoints on that, which is amazing because you're showing, especially with the video that's gone viral and just what you're doing to advocate that you can do both. You can be in uniform, you can be a veteran, but you can also represent not only your state, but you're representing yourself and so many other women out there at the same time.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting to see the dynamic shift when you're talking to someone and then all of a sudden, it's Miss Washington face to face, but it's, hey, also I served 4 years in the military. I'm a veteran, and then people kind of shift their attitude when they talk to you. They take you a little bit more serious. And it's been so interesting to kind of endure that this year and be like, you know what? You can do both.
How were you so-called not accepted, but how do you think you were perceived in, that aspect of being Miss Washington? Because obviously with soldiers, everybody knows with veterans, you have almost your military family and there's that camaraderie. Did you feel that you were almost accepted or understood by the other aspect on the other side?
I think, from my experience, the girls at first are like, oh, cool, like Army, like don't maybe know much about it, but like going into competition itself, it was normal to me and I didn't think anything of it. And especially in a competition mindset, you're very focused on just one, enjoying your time there, but two, like the second you start thinking about the other girls or other opinions is when it starts to kind of eat at you. So I was very much, you know what, this is who I am. You're going to like me or you're not going to like me. In terms of, taking home the title. And I know walking in that I'm okay with me. I love what I do or I love what I did. I'm here to represent, my hometown of Clark County and hopefully the state of Washington and go to Miss America. And that's going to be okay. So it's once you kind of think about it, I think you're like, oh, I don't know. It just felt normal to me.
You do a lot of advocating for those with hearing devices, and it's because you've experienced it not once, but twice, but you've had 8 ear surgeries while in the Army. We have to know, were you born that way? Or was it something that would kind of progress? Because I know you said earlier, you're like, oh, the Air Force said no, but the Army put me in with a waiver.
Oh, yeah. I always say the Army's my best friend because they gave me that waiver. Little did they know I need 6 more. But when I was 17, I was a senior in high school and I had a perforated eardrum, which basically is just a hole in your ear. It's painful, very painful. but we opted to have surgery to close that perforation. It didn't work the first time, and then it worked temporarily the second time, which was long enough to get me into the Army with that waiver. And then I was in the Army for 6 months. I got to my duty station, and of course, you have to go to the audiologist, go take your hearing test. And they were like, hey, we need you to go see the ENT. I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm super familiar with the ENT. I went there and they said that my perforation was back. And then that this time I had something called cholesteatoma, which is basically just a collection of dead skin cells that like eat through your eardrum. So I don't have a middle eardrum anymore. It's actually held together with a titanium bar. So we did that third ear surgery. It didn't work. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Finally, they closed that perforation, got rid of the cholesteatoma. And in between those surgeries, I was wearing a hearing device called the Oticon, probably the one most people are familiar with. It's the one you take in, take out. It was a cute little pink one. But I had so much inner ear damage that it hurt to wear, and it felt like it was hurting me more than helping me. So we opted to go for the Ossia, which is made by Cochlear. It's a permanent device that they attach to your skull, and then there's a magnet that goes on the outside. It's a bone conductive hearing device. And it's generally just changed the quality of my life when it comes to hearing. I don't have that pain that I had when I was wearing my Oticon. And it's, helpful to hear. I think we kind of take things for granted, but I never first saw myself having those ear surgeries or really having any issue at all. And to be wearing a permanent hearing device at 23, it's like, whoa, but I'm okay with it. It was supposed to happen. And obviously there is a reason I get to share that story today.
I love that. I think so many of us, like you said, we take it for granted, hearing, seeing just the little things until it's taken from you, or it's kind of, you've had to adapt in a different way. I love that you're advocating for so many with hearing devices, because I think once that is taken away from you, it's truly a gift. I can't even begin to imagine. It's almost a sense of panic of what do I do now? And there's a lot of people even here, especially in the military and in my state of Texas, that they're like, I was almost transformed by my hearing device because people would stare at me and I was just very self-conscious, but it gave me a reason to talk about it and help people through it. Are you the same way?
Absolutely. And one of the most, I think, impactful moments, because when I did first get the Ossia, obviously it has to set for about a month before you put the magnet on. And people do stare, it's this foreign device sticking out of my head. It's like, whoa, what's going on? But I had this mom reach out to me and she said, my daughter didn't like to wear her Ossia because she didn't feel pretty with it. But when she saw you wearing yours, she wanted to wear hers. And it melted my heart because I felt that same way, but I have to own it, right? We have to own who we are. I can't change that. I don't have my hearing, right? And I'm going to have this device with me for the rest of my life. So why not own it? And to be able to be like, wear it, you're beautiful with or without it. We're beautiful how we're made, so it was a really cool moment. I think to hear
That's
that.
so cool. Mm-hmm. That's so sweet. How has the reaction been to your viral TikTok video? Because so many, you even Google your name and you're everywhere. But when you Google your name and then you put yourself into TikTok, that video comes up. Did you get really good reactions and positive feedback? Or with social media, did you get some that were nice?
So the women are so kind on that TikTok, but there were a lot of men. I will say I had to stop looking at the comments just because a lot of people would say, you didn't kick down any doors. I think I had that on the last slide. But I was talking metaphorically, and I was like, you don't understand that. I guess that's like a problem issue. But it was so weird to see like the shift. Like some people loved it, and then others were just like, why would you say that? You obviously didn't listen, or he makes more like whatever. So it was weird. I was like, whoa, just have never experienced that before.
I loved it. I loved it. It was shared to me so many times. I was like, yes. Like I even like replayed it multiple times. I'm like, yes, like this is exactly what we need on the podcast. But I love what you stand for, because you are showing that you can excel and experience what you're passionate about in so many different aspects, which brings me to the question, what is next? Because you did mention Miss America. What is life looking like next for you? What are your plans?
Yeah, well, I will say I've been getting this question a lot lately. I crowned the next Miss Washington in 23 days, I think, and I was crowned last July. And this year has been a huge year for me. I was crowned Miss Washington last July. I was still in school, finishing up my bachelor's degree, and then I had my 8th ear surgery, and then I competed at Miss America, and then I got out of the Army, and then I graduated with my bachelor's, and now all of those things are done. Everything that I've been working for so long is done. And I would be lying if I said I have life figured out. I don't. At this very moment, I have no idea what's next. I have a lot of opportunity. I've learned a lot. I have a lot of skill, experience, but I think I'm finding it more and more okay to say I don't know what's next. And maybe I just need to take a breath and kind of reevaluate because it's been a big year.
It sounds like you're probably a lot like me. You're a planner. You know exactly what's coming up. You have everything kind of pre-planned so you can kind of adjust. And when there's nothing coming up, it's almost the sense of panic of, what do I do now? What am I supposed to do now? Because you've kind of fit into this mold that you've created for yourself. It's almost that panic of, I don't know what else is next. Am I supposed to have something planned? So I love that you're still being open about, it's okay to just give yourself grace and just take a moment, because life will show you what direction you're supposed to take next.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of, I'm just putting it in like the universe's hands at this point, you know? It's terrifying, but it's beautiful too, I think, to have a moment where I can say, wow, I've lived every dream that I wanted to up until this point, and now the world is my oyster, you know? And I think when we kind of look at those situations like that in a positive light, you know, it becomes maybe a lot less daunting. But no, I think about it every day. I'm like, I have no idea. Well, what's going on?
Especially at 23, I'm going to age myself. But if I were able to sit there and be like, I've accomplished everything that I was ready and wanting to do at 23, oh man, would my path of life been just a little different. So I feel like you're getting a head start, which is a good spot to be in.
Thank you. I feel like it just doesn't always feel that way, you know, from being completely transparent. I feel like life today is just so go, go, go. The more you do, you know, the more accomplished you are. But it's just, I don't know. It's an odd time. But thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
We're our worst critics. I always tell people when they're like, I'm not doing well, or I need to do this better. We are our worst critics. I always tell even listeners, there's always at least one person that's looking up to you and they just are just amazed by what you're doing. So I always say, give yourself a little bit of grace, because I mean, you've accomplished so much at 23. I mean, look at where you are, look at what you've done in such a short amount of time, which is very impressive.
Thank you. That means the world to hear. So thank you very much.
If we have listeners that, I mean, we're global, we're all over the world, which is amazing. If we have a female, especially, that may be listening and is possibly interested in joining the military, what feedback or advice would you give them?
Do it. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I truthfully don't believe I would be the same person I am today if I hadn't joined. And when I was 17, my goal was not to join. Like, I thought I was going to college. I thought I was going to join a sorority. Like, completely different life path, but I couldn't afford college. The army, the military, it afforded me that opportunity. And I was terrified at first, sure. But the more terrified you are, I feel like the more you should do something, like bring yourself out of that comfort zone, and the friendships made, the personal and professional development. It doesn't have to be lifelong. I only did 4.5 years, but I love who I am today because I did serve. So just go for it. Take the leap.
I'm flipping the script now to ask you on the other aspect. If they're listening and they're like, you know what, I really, even maybe not only they want to join the beauty pageant world, or maybe they want their daughter to do so. I gotta ask, how is that when it comes to self-image, mental health? We talk about mental health all the time on this podcast. How is that in regards to your self-esteem and your self-worth and mental health? What advice would you give for somebody that wants to go into that aspect?
If I could give any piece of advice, and knowing what I know today and living what I've lived, I started competing when I was 15 years old. My biggest goal in life was to be Miss America. I wanted to be Miss America because, you know, I'm sure you've probably watched Miss America on TV, right? And I was so insecure growing up, and I wanted to be everything that those women represented. And so I started competing. I competed several times before I ever won local title. And the first time I went to Miss Washington, I won Miss Washington. You have to be very secure in who you are, you know the difference that you want to make. And all of those other things will come along with it. Miss America, for example, is the largest scholarship provider for women in the United States today. So I walked away with over $23,000 in scholarships. I can public speak. I can interview really well. All of those things. I can dress professionally, you know. It's those little skills that really launch you in life. But as far as like, you know, that self-image and having a tougher skin to know that you're going to be worthy, whether you walk away with the crown and sash or not. And that's a huge lesson that I think a lot of girls like learn through competing. You have to understand that they are one set of judges. It could be a different day, different story, but it doesn't make you any less than. So I hope that maybe would answer some questions. And it's just a little of what I've learned through competing and, almost being done. Once you go to Miss America, you can't go again. So it's been a journey of learning and a lot of growth.
You're in two separate categories. I always say you're in the beauty category and then you're in the bravery category, but you're merging them both so eloquently at the same time. But in the military aspect and being a veteran, and then in the beauty pageant industry, there is competition in both. Did you feel more competition in the Army, especially in basic, going through everything, especially being a female? Because, I mean, we're being real on this podcast. Being a female, going into the military, very hard. You're judged a million different directions. Then being a veteran as a female, you're judged in more ways than one. But you're adding on to it being, oh, hi, I am Miss Washington 2023. And you're bringing that different aspect. Did you feel that sense of competition on both sides? And how did you handle that?
I will say in the military, going in, I think what this was really helpful for me is not knowing what I was getting myself into. Like, I just remember being like, okay, I guess I'm going to do this and I'm going to learn along the way. And because I went in with that mindset, I was so not oblivious, but almost I put my blinders on to any sense of competition because truthfully, I was just trying to do the best I could every day, which was for me. It wasn't for anyone else. It wasn't for promotion or it wasn't for, an ACFT, any fitness test, nothing like that. It was simply I had to prove to myself that I could do this and I could do well day in and day out. And then when it came to being Miss Washington and being in the military, I think that's kind of when I started to notice maybe opinions shift, not so much in the world of pageantry, but when they're both combined. Because there are a lot of stereotypes and there will be a lot of service members, especially this year. There's been a number of articles and things that have come out where people will be like, she's not doing anything, she's not doing anything for the Army. She's a 42. She's human resources. She just pushes paper. But no, I'll say in like my case, as soon as I was crowned Miss Washington, I was working with the Seattle Recruiting Battalion, Portland Recruiting Battalion, MWR. We were working on all of these like recruitment efforts. I'm going into schools and I'm showing young girls and young boys, you can do both, right? I went to Las Vegas for the Military Influencer Conference. Like, I got to talk about recruitment and I got to talk about what it meant to be all you can be, right? The Army's motto is be all you can be. And I really got to encompass that this year. But I think there was more of a shift when that crown was placed on my head and I was still active duty. So I don't know. It's all about how you perceive yourself and that confidence, right? There's no competition if you don't let there be any.
You're showing that you can do both. I feel like we've become a little bit stuck in our ways from what even we looked at or thought of the military 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And it's really showing that you don't have to choose one or the other when it comes to anything in your life. And I think that's important because especially when you look up any interview that you've ever done, you're proudly supporting and honoring both at the same time, which I think is beautiful.
Absolutely. I always like to say that crowns and combat boots go really good together, and it's different. It's so different. And the military isn't the same as it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago. So it's nice to kind of be a part of maybe that shift that's going on where we look at both of these entities very differently.
Well, I'm so grateful you came on, shared your story. I think it is beautiful. I love what you're doing and advocating, not just for veterans and soldiers. Again, not just for the beauty pageant. You're encompassing everything. From those that have hearing devices, you're showing what true inner beauty looks like on the outside for everybody that's watching. Because especially with social media, you always have eyes on you. You're always going to have a comment section. I love that you're not paying attention to that section at all times because it can be a little deceiving. But I loved the video that you made. So empowering. I love how you carry yourself, especially for every young woman and even men. So guys, if you're listening, you can learn, even if you have daughters or, nieces or anything, you can learn how to support a female. And that's why we have you on today. I think that is so important.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure, real honor.